So I want to talk about what do we look for as evidence of a shifting market? And this is something that I talk with my clients about at length. When we sit down and we go through, of course, everybody wants to know pretty much the same thing. How much can I sell my house for? How long is it going to take? What are you going to do to help me accomplish my goal of selling my home? What's your commission? I mean, those are really the main things. Oh, and of course, what should I do to my house beforehand to prepare it for sale? And when I sit down and I talk with folks and we really go through things in detail, of course, not everybody I sit down with chooses me or I choose them or they can accomplish their goals. And I'm very upfront with people about what will likely happen when they put their home on the market. And I will toot my own horn. I don't do that very much on the show, but I'm usually right because I've been doing this for a long time. I've sold a lot of real estate here in Charleston, and people want the benefit of that experience. I mean, in reality, we've got, 7,000 agents in our market, and I would say statistically, we are a very young or immature market, meaning there are not a ton of agents out there with a bunch of experience and a bunch of home sales under their belt. It's a lot of new agents that don't really know exactly what they're doing. They know enough to help someone buy and sell, or maybe they've been around for a few years and they've had some sales and they've had transactional experience, but they don't have the budget or the systems to really offer incredible service and go above and beyond for people. And so when we talk about what's happening in the market, and I get asked the question of, hey, how's the market? When do you see any signs of a shift? I want you guys to understand what we look for, what I look for as evidence of a shifting market. And market shift can really best be analyzed by looking at the factors that influence supply and demand. I mean, which all have an overall impact on home prices. So you could also look at it this way. You market shift incrementally because of trends within the specific market you're analyzing. And that could be internal factors or it could be external factors, things like, macroeconomic indicators. So if we look at supply is pretty easy. The number of people that want to buy or need to sell and the number of housing starts, new construction, which is still behind pace, that we're just not putting enough new construction properties on the market. Now, this recent dip in interest rates helps in that it allows builders to finance projects at a lower cost, which reduces their holding cost and overall project cost, which allows them to sell homes and make a little more money, or dip into lower priced homes, which has historically been the problem over the past several years because the cost associated with building an entry-level home, especially in Charleston, is tough because the land costs so much. So they can't recoup enough on the back end to make the investment worthwhile, which is why they focus on, the middle of the road home to the middle to upper tier home. We got a ton of those. So, we look at the number of people that want or need to sell and the number of housing starts, and supply impacts home prices, and of course is one half of what we look at to measure the health and balance of a real estate market. The other side, of course, being the demand side. The demand side is much more inclusive. It includes things like interest rates and economic growth and the number of households and household formation trends and the availability of mortgages and the affordability of housing. Things like speculative demand and consumer confidence and geographic factors. So if we look at just economic growth for a second, I mean, demand for housing, of course, is dependent upon income. And when you've got more economic growth and rising incomes, people have the ability to spend more on houses. This, of course, will increase demand and push prices. In fact, demand for housing is often noted to be the income elastic or the quote-unquote luxury good, where rising incomes lead to a bigger percentage of income being spent on houses. So, I mean, just in a recession, falling incomes mean people can't afford to buy, and those who lose their job obviously fall behind on their mortgage payments and end up with their home being foreclosed on. I mean, look at what happened 12 years ago. So then we look at something like unemployment, which is incredibly low right now. So related to economic growth, when unemployment is rising, fewer people have the ability to afford a house. But, even the fear of unemployment can discourage a lot of people from entering into the property market. And then we look at something like interest rates, right? Look at how low interest rates are right now and how low they have been for years and years and years now. I mean, Sam, my director of marketing, was telling me this week that, he's now refinancing a house that he bought a year ago, 18 months ago. That's incredible because your interest rate was probably very low to begin with. And so it presents these opportunities, especially with what we've been talking about last segment, which is fantastic. And it, of course, impacts the overall cost of owning a home. It is directly related to affordability. So the saving grace for our market right now is the interest rate because prices have gone up for, at least 8 years now. I think we're at 8 years of price appreciation in our market. And so at some point in time, you have to ask yourself the question of, well, okay, can I continue to afford to pay more and more and more for these homes? Is the wage that I'm earning or expected to earn in the near future consistent with price increases? And we have had multiple years of double-digit price increases in separate areas of Charleston, sometimes year over year. In fact, if you look at it over a 5-year stretch, I think we're at about 30%, 30+% in some areas, which is incredible. And so all this, a lot of it ties into consumer confidence. Consumer confidence is important for determining whether people want to take the risk of taking out a mortgage. Nobody wants to catch a falling sword, right? Which is why a lot of people that are really concerned about the stock market and the coronavirus and the overall economic impact of all of that, some of them are just sitting on the sidelines and they're waiting to happen. They don't necessarily need to move. They would like to move. There are some things that, are driving them to want to sell and, of course, want to buy, but it's not an immediate need. If you're getting relocated to another state for a job and you own a home, you want to sell it, right? But for the people that would just like to make a lateral move, maybe they own a nice home in James Island and their kids are, one of them's going off to college, another one's graduating next year, and they want to move to Mount Pleasant or Daniel Island or downtown or wherever, and they're okay with buying a smaller home for the same price. And if that interest rate that they have is, 4% or higher, then theoretically they're spending less on a property in a location they want to be in, and they've benefited from appreciation over the years that they've owned that property, which helps afford the down payment for the new place they want to move into. So this is all connected, and consumer confidence has a big part in our housing market. If people fear home prices falling, then they're going to defer. They're going to put buying on hold because they're going to see how much further it's going to drop so that they can get a better deal on the entry-level price of the home that they purchase. And then we've got things like geographical factors. And my God, are we going through that right now? We're dealing with some serious issues with the coronavirus. All of that, of course, is totally out of our control. But that could also be things like, our local economy booming as a result of companies like Boeing coming in and Volvo and, all the different external factors that impact us here locally. So, if you look at all of these different things individually, and then you look at, because I do this with my clients, when we sit down and we talk about pricing their home effectively and, would they rather wait on the market longer to get maybe a little bit more for their house, or would they prefer to price it to sell within the first 30 days, which traditionally is going to get you the best offer anyways if you price it appropriately? If you use the latter, if you use the strategy where, hey, it's okay if it's 90, 120, 180 days before I sell this place, I just want this price for it. The challenge is going to be that you have factors that are outside of your control that might have an immediate impact on the value of your home or the buyer's willingness to pay your price. And those things are things like what we're going through right now with the stock market and the coronavirus. It could be things like your neighbor who has a home very similar to yours is getting a divorce and they need to sell now. That sale, which let's say they price it to sell now. It's a good $10,000, $15,000 less than your home if everything were the same, and they don't want to wait around. They want to sell it and get out of there. Well, it's not like the appraiser that appraises your home is going to say, oh yeah, but that was a divorce. That doesn't really count. It does count. It has a direct impact on what buyers perceive to be the value of your home. Or let's say that happens, twice in a row in your neighborhood. Now you've got consistent data that shows that this is what buyers are willing to pay for a home like yours. And so when I'm talking to folks right now and we talk about the severe shortage of supply, I mean, there are plenty of people that I've talked to over the past week that, we're thinking about maybe April, grass will be greener then, and things will be blooming. It'll be a better time to sell. And if they have the ability to sell now, I'm encouraging them to sell now, not because I want a paycheck now, but because I think now represents a fantastic opportunity to beat the competition to the table. That's what everybody else lists is in April. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because there are also more buyers in April, but there are plenty of people that are looking now, and they're just kind of forced to sit on the sideline and wait for that right property to hit the market. Maybe your property is that one. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times over the past month that I have looked at properties and then done a cursory search for homes that are available or under contract in that neighborhood, and it's like next to nothing. It's like maybe 1, 2. That's a good thing for sellers, because with less consistent data to show people this is what your home is worth, it allows you to push the envelope on your asking price. The only challenge with that is it creates a little uncertainty with regard to what people are historically willing to pay for a home like yours over the past 6 months or so. And it, of course, makes our job a little bit easier because we don't have, it's not like, if in a new construction neighborhood where everything is pretty much the same and sells for pretty much the same price per square foot. If you're in a neighborhood that's a little older, where you've got one property that was fully renovated plus another property that hasn't been touched since the 80s, and those are your only two comps, that makes our lives challenging. So then, of course, you need to rely on an agent that knows how to price those properties effectively and knows how much it would cost to turn that home that hasn't been touched since the 80s into the home that was just remodeled 2 months ago. I have the benefit of having flipped and having represented investors that have done well over 100 transactions, have spent millions and millions of dollars, a lot of that my own money, on renovations and flips and repairs and all of that stuff. I can tell you what that stuff costs. And that kind of information and experience counts when you're analyzing how much a home is going to sell for. So if that's something you're considering, you're thinking about selling your house, or if you just want to stay up to date with what's happening in the market, so many of my listeners and people that we communicate with just want to know what's going on over time. So I send them monthly, quarterly reports, whatever kind of frequency you'd like, just to stay up to date with what's happening in the market in the event you don't catch this show every Saturday or Sunday, which I hope you do. But if you'd like that information, my number is 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. You can visit us online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. And, of course, send me an email, Brian@BrianBeattyTeam.com. Stick around for more of the